Hello and welcome to another edition of the Rider Rumblings podcast. This is episode 179 with Taylor Shire and Darrell Davis, and the Saskatchewan Roughriders are back from the bye week. Darrell set to visit the Edmonton Elks on Saturday, but much more interesting things, I guess, to talk about this week in the CFL with a number of rule changes and playing field modifications happening, not this year, but next year and even in 2027. A lot to go through, so we'll go through each one and give our thoughts and analysis on it. But overall, what are your thoughts on the moves made by Stuart Johnson?
Yeah, I do want to see the Riders back in action because, when we miss a week, but boy, they filled in that week pretty wildly, didn't they? With Stuart Johnson, the commissioner, after 151 days coming through with all these rules changes. I'm an advocate of almost all of them. I've never really wanted the rules changed, but the what they've come up with, and we'll talk about it, is a pretty good compromise. I've been a strong advocate of moving the goalpost to the back of the end zone, and I'm so glad they did that, Taylor, for the improvement of the game, the safety of the players, and just everything that's involved with it. I know people are saying it's an Americanization of the game. No, it's an improvement to the game, the Canadian football game. So I think that's a great way to start. It's the biggest change of them all, and it's the best change of them all.
Yeah, you've written about that before. Maybe it was last year, even the year before, where certain things come up where we don't see it often, where a field goal post actually causes disruption in the game. Cody Fajardo 2019 is obviously the biggest one, but it has effects on each play that's around there, even if the ball doesn't hit the upright. And that was sort of noted in the press conference today where, yes, it can disrupt the play, but think about every time a receiver's crossing the middle, every time a quarterback's having to throw over it, there's different ways that you have to work around it. So eliminating that is going to open up the field more. Yes, maybe not have a freak injury when a guy runs into it or something. But I think, that is, like you said, the most significant and a great rule change, although it might, kickers might have a bit of an issue with it. Haven't talked to Brett Lauder yet. But
it's going to help punters, though, right? Punting out of their end zone, they've got more room to punt the football, which I think is a big thing. And this was really turning into the Canadian Field Goal League. Taylor, I've been writing for years, the last year, couple of years or so, about the increasing number of field goals every game and the decreasing number of touchdowns. The NFL noticed that 50 years ago. So in 1974, the NFL moved its goalpost to the back of the end zone and found out that there were way more touchdowns the following years and way fewer field goals. Field goal is one of the most boring play in the world. Even if Brett Lauder's kicking it these days, you never know what might happen if he makes it or not. But they're dull. So, I always say that's when I get up and fix a sandwich because kickers make other than Lauder again, make 85, 90% of their field goals now. So move it back. Give it a challenge. Everybody said 20 yards was too far, and that's what the end zones were originally. They've now shortened the end zones to 15 yards. So that plays into it a little bit. They've shortened the whole playing field by 10 yards. That filters into it. I think we're going to see fewer field goals, more touchdowns, more third down gambles. I think it, and as you talked about, opens up a lot more of the end zone to make those great plays in the end zone. So I think that's, not only is it safe, but it's just a great, great rule change. The NFL has proven it, and I know we're not trying to make this into the NFL, but I just think that it's a rule change that had to be done for the betterment of the CFL, and I'm so glad they made it, and I won't take any credit for it, okay?
I'm sure he reads your stuff, though, and maybe he got that idea from you.
He's made a couple comments to me about things I've written. That's true. So we do go way back. The commissioner and I've written this before too, Taylor, that when I was in charge of the Football Reporters of Canada, the Secretary-Treasurer, I dealt with Stuart Johnson a lot. Because TSN sponsors the FRC. So I dealt with Stuart quite a bit. Then we got to know each other pretty well. I don't think he's just taking my suggestions. I would never.
You weren't on the panel either.
Yeah, exactly. The panel suggestions are probably some things he doesn't agree with, but I'm glad however it happened. And I think it's mostly analytics and data and just common sense that made them make that decision. Don't you think it's a great move?
Yeah, I like it. And it's going to lead to, like you said, more gambles, more turnover on downs in that sort of gambling area, which, those bigger plays. The critics say, oh, you're getting rid of the missed field goal return, which is maybe one of the more exciting plays, but how many times do we ever see a missed field goal return? Mm-hmm. Like, how many times is that actually the most exciting play? We see field goals way more often, and usually often if they're missed, they're kicked through the back of the end zone. Rarely are they.
Yeah.
Or at least able to be conceded, right? Oftentimes we see it maybe once a game where a guy has a chance to make a good return, but
But you can still get missed field goal returns from this play, right? If they're short, they can return them out of the end zone. And that might be a strategy to race downfield and get that single point to tackle the returner in the end zone. So that's why I kind of like it. They haven't taken the rouge out completely, and you can still punt it into the end zone and have a point conceded. So that plays into strategy a little bit too. And the idea that it's a dead ball play that it bounces through the end zone or misses wide of the uprights. That's one of the things Stuart Johnson said today in the press conference that we're recording this Monday, obviously. And what he said was, no way a Grey Cup should ever be conceded, should be decided on a play like that. These are now active points. They're not dead ball points anymore. So that's an improvement too in the way. And have always been in favor of having a single point in the CFL. It's one of the things that kept it unique. I know people say it rewards failure. I always said it rewarded field position by getting close enough to kick that. But if your field goal kicker misses a 25-yarder, why should he get 1 point? He should be punished. So I see that side of the argument. I think they're good with that. We had the discussion after Craig Reynolds, the Riders CEO and president today. You and I were talking to him about it. And afterwards, I even thought, you know what? This gives consistency. They can now scrimmage from the 5-yard line for a convert after a touchdown, and you can go from there for a 2-point convert, or you can kick a 27-yard convert for 1 point. So you can go for the 2-point convert in exactly the same spot. You don't have to tell anybody what you're doing. You don't have to move the ball around. It could add some consistency. And that's one of the things that Craig Reynolds said the rules committee still has to figure out some of the fine tuning of this. But I just like the way it's progressing.
Yeah, we don't know where the converts will be kicked from yet, but that is an interesting thing because they did move them back a few years ago to make them not easy chip shots. They wanted to make it harder. But the one thing about the rouge, and I think I talked about it last year, I believe it was Liram Hairala who kicked it and won the game. And I said, nobody conceded that point. So unless the point is conceded, you shouldn't earn a point. And so that's exactly what they've done. And maybe they listened to this podcast from last year. I don't know what episode it was, but I remember saying that. I said, if you didn't concede a point, how can you give up a point?
Good.
If you take if you take a knee, yes, you should concede a point. You have to run it out now, and we're going to see more potential. I would say, I don't know if it's going to change the return strategy out of the end zone, but I bet you we'll see a few more returns or a few more guys try to return it out.
And how about the kickers and the punters, right? Especially a punter now.
To not sail it through the end zone.
Yeah, you don't just sail it through. You have to positionally. So I think it's demanding better skills and more strategy. So, right? What if it does get kicked in the end zone? What do you tell your returner? Well, bring it out or just don't touch it. I don't know.
Or just don't touch it and let it maybe bounce 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden it doesn't, and you have a punter who runs and recovers it for a touchdown. That is going to open this up a little bit more for stuff like that. And it keeps
the kicking game in the CFL. Watching the NFL this past weekend, I know that it's a good game, but it's not as exciting. The rules aren't as exciting as the CFL. Taking out the kickoffs, they're starting to use the kickoffs a little bit more effectively in the NFL. But still, fair catching almost every punt. The punt returns are such a big, exciting part of the Canadian Football League. They're going to keep those in. And the strategy might be different because it's a shorter field now, right? But it's still 65 yards wide. So the return games are going to make even more of a difference, I think, now. So because suddenly you're 10 yards further ahead all the time. So you have a better chance to score a touchdown. That's what they're after, more touchdowns. I think that's what they've put in place, rules that will help them score more touchdowns.
Yeah, I like the goalposts and the shortened end zones because of the goalposts. I don't really understand why they shortened the field. I know they wanted to be closer to the other, have the offense closer to the other team's end zone. So then move them up from their starting position. Yeah. Say if they want to scrimmage from the 40, make it the 50 after a field goal or whatever it might be. Obviously, if you have to go the length of the field, it adds 10 more yards. But so what? How
about this point? Shortening it to 100 yards, and now you've got 30 yards worth of end zones. Suddenly, a lot of the CFL fields will fit into an American stadium.
And so maybe that's the one thing that obviously the message that wasn't a relevant thing, but that was the one. It was like, right? Why did they do that? Yeah. And Stuart Johnson said to allow teams to score more touchdowns by being closer to the opposing team's end zone. And sure, if a team punts it for field position, they'll have to go 10 more yards to actually do it, but I don't know if that'll.
He also said that you're automatically 10 yards closer, basically, for kicking a field goal if you do need a field goal. So I like the idea. I think I think the whole set of rules was a package, right? It wasn't just one thought, here, let's do this. Was how does it all involve the game? And I think that's interesting. And that's why the field was shortened. That's why the end zones were shortened. That's why the goalposts were moved back. It was all part of one thought to make the game more exciting, more offensively oriented. And I think that's what they've done. We'll find out. It was interesting. He said, we're not going to do a study every year and say, let's try this 2 years. This is what we're doing, he said. And then we'll look at it. We'll do the evaluations as it goes along.
The one thing that might trickle down from the shortened field is the ability to sell more seats on field level. And that's one thing that maybe the team said, if you shorten the end zones, then I can put a bunch of couches right there. Kind of what I think they do that Edmonton, a few other places where you have these like up close and personal seating areas that'll, go for a pretty penny. And if the Riders can do that at Mosaic Stadium and both of the end zones or one of the end zones, that's a few more $1,000 per each game that you will generate over the course of a year. That would add up. And I could see, at the one end zone to have some of the sort of like patio seating right on the field, right? With a little rope. So
got a few extra.
That'll, you can add that now quite easily.
Just what we need, more pill country.
Yeah. The classy pill country on the other side.
Classy,
and then
we'll
maybe have like the party zone on the right in front of pill country. You could have, I don't know.
Chardonnay country.
You'd have to have, you'd have to have maybe a few more security, more security presence down on the field. But I could see them adding that to the other end zone, kind of
if there's money to be made, it's like the tailgating.
That's what I mean, right? If there's money to be made,
Riders will find ways to make money out of it. That's for sure.
Or maybe they should just from the one end zone, they should just hook up a bunch of tailgates and pull the tailgate down from the back wall, and that's where fans can sit. And there's your tailgate, and you can sit and watch a game from the tailgate. That folds right back up.
As long as they pay for it.
And you could put the sponsorship of whatever vehicle is on the back of the tailgate, and they can pay for that. There. If Craig Reynolds is listening to this,
you up for ideas.
Got some marketing ideas for them to sell some tickets. So we've covered the goalposts, the end zones, the shortened field, the rouge, the opposing benches on opposing sidelines isn't relevant here, but it's relevant in a couple other markets. And we saw it kind of come into play a few weeks ago when Argos head coach Ryan Didwin kind of ran over. And we've seen it before where there's almost altercations that happen because of the benches. And he didn't really reference that. He referenced more the player substitutions when a player has to run around the other guy's bench 50 yards down the field to actually get into a play. Now he can kind of go down his own sideline and run onto
because the benches will be in the middle of the field now as opposed to one that goes down to about the 20-yard line or the other 20-yard line.
So that's a good change. Not relevant here, but just one that sort of made sense and wasn't and could have been done without a press conference. That was sort of a minor one.
They threw that one in because, and you're right, we saw the Dinwiddie activity the other day. This just prevents teams from being together and yelling at each other. And if you're apart, you've got 65 yards of neutral ground in between you. So you cool off maybe by the time you get over there, right? And you're not chirping at each other. So it's a good move. You're right. It's never been an issue in Saskatchewan because as far back as I remember, teams have been on opposite sides here. For a while, it was all the Eastern teams had both benches side by side, and the Western teams that were always on opposite sides. But the BC Lions switched to put them all on one side now. And there's been, when you look, there's been some altercations there too. So just changing it is a smart idea. It saves the officials a lot of hassle. And his point about making it easier to make a substitution is also a good one.
Yeah, at Old Mosaic Stadium or Taylor Field, wherever you want to call it, I know there was some times where, because the opposing team would have to run across the field into the tunnel through the Riders' bench at the break, and the Riders most of them would be off to their sort of entrance near the end zone. But I know there was a couple of at least conversations that probably happened when one of the teams was running through. But that's not relevant. You're going to two different end zones here, but it'll change the setup of a few other stadiums and something they'll also have to work on.
Yeah.
And I guess the last one would be the play clock going down or going away from a whistled in play clock to a rolling play clock, 35 seconds, sort of aligning with the NFL, sort of not, just aligning with game flow.
NFL's 45 seconds, right?
Right. And that's what I mean. So you get a bit of a different
quicker
speed. Sure. Yeah. Quicker. And less, because some referees blow it in fast. Some let it go on a little bit. When does that 20-second play clock start is kind of,
and it was getting to the point, Taylor, where the 20 seconds was almost taking as long as an NFL
Yeah.
45 seconds, right? Because they would wait. Y'all okay? Yeah, let's go. Okay, I'll whistle it in. Now you got 20 seconds. So this way, it's 35 after a play. It's automatic. As soon as that play's over, you got 35 seconds, and I think that's a bit of a hustle and bustle to get ready after that, because sometimes that NFL drags at 45. You think, you know what, they could do this quicker. So I think 35 is a decent compromise. That's one that they can fiddle with a little bit quite easily, but I like that, because now the players should be cognizant of the fact right away, I have to get back to the huddle, because it sounds like the offense can snap the ball as soon as they're ready. So you've got to hustle if you're a defensive player, and that prevents one of the issues that could have surfaced.
Yeah, I believe the offenses will then do fewer substitutions and maybe fewer huddles, and just
I hope so.
Start playing, right? So we're going to have 6 plays and we're just going to go through them. We're not going to huddle. We're going to go fast, and that'll be like that would be a good conversation for Mark Mueller. Maybe not tomorrow, but as the season, or as he sort of gets used to this, how different offensive coordinators can adapt to using that play clock and making sure you use the time wisely. But there may be some changes when it comes to the final 3 minutes as well of the games, because that's the most exciting time in the CFL. So whether or not there'll be some sort of modifications, I think, is to be determined.
Yeah,
and something that'll be maybe rolled out this offseason.
Yeah, I like the rule changes. As I wrote in the Leader-Post, though they fell short of one. Taylor, they should have kept going and either eliminated the God Center or at least kept reducing. It's just getting so overzealous with its control of games that they've got to do something with that. And I was expecting that to be part of the announcement. So Good for Stuart Johnson, all the rule changes, but he should have reined in that the replay center, it's called now. And just taken away a lot of its authority, but that's not going to happen at the moment. They've got enough other things to worry about right now.
Yeah, and I would agree. I like the rule changes. I think they will benefit the product of the CFL, but the trickle-down effect is, in my opinion, massive, and something that isn't being talked about as much, because it's going to affect these 9 home games and potentially 1 playoff game in the CFL in each stadium, but there's 9 games a week probably at Mosaic Stadium when it comes to amateur football, from RMF to the Thunder to the Rams. Everybody is going to be affected now, and they're going to have to react to this news. And what does that mean? We don't know what that means for any of those leagues, but that's something that's going to be discussed, obviously, in the coming weeks. And they have ample time to do that. They have till 2027 to all these take effect, but that's something they're going to have to figure out in the next 2 years.
Yeah, when I think about a lot of the places, and they almost have portable goalposts when you think of some of the smaller centers, right, that are on little wheels so that you can use the field for everything. So maybe they can move the goalposts back if they need to. For places like Leibel Field and Saskatoon Minor Football Field, what are they going to do if the rules change? It costs some money to move the goalpost to the back of the end zone, obviously. So this is giving them a year and a half to decide if they're going to do it is interesting. I don't know how happy a lot of these minor football leagues and the venues are going to be about having to make the changes, or if they'll make the changes, right? I hope they do. It's best if the game was consistent from minor level right up to the Canadian Football League, but there's going to be some costs involved. And, people are already asking, there's going to be new turf at Mosaic Stadium. Yes. They're going to move the goalposts. Yes. As Craig Reynolds told us, the turf at Mosaic is about 7 years old already. It's time for it to be replaced, so it's going to have to be. Who pays for that? Well, the city of Regina does, so it's part of the normal maintenance. But what do you do at a place like Leibel Field, which is a wonderful little football facility in Regina? And now all of a sudden you're going to say, well, you have to wait to see what the junior leagues do and what the university leagues do, because the minor football leagues do. It changes their game. They don't kick as well as the pros do, so maybe they don't want to move it. But if you're going to have a chance to play at Mosaic Stadium, which is the Taj Mahal of football in Saskatchewan, then you maybe want to change the rules to make sure that you're adapting to or playing by the same standards. I don't know where it's going. You're right. They've thrown a wrench into that one, and it's going to be interesting to see where that one goes, because there's going to be a lot of unhappy people about that. But once again, as you said, it may be all for the better in the long run. But right now, it's kind of a hassle.
Yeah, the CFL is obviously making a change. So whether or not other leagues, think the Canadian Junior Football League, U Sports, they would all have to be sort of together. RMF can kind of, in my opinion, do what they want to do, and other leagues like that. But for every Leibel Field across the country, that everyone's going to have a decision. Every small minor football league will either have to adapt or keep it the same, and then choose maybe not to play games at Mosaic Stadium, or have to figure out a way to paint the turf. And that was an interesting point. Too early for me to ask Craig Reynolds if the new turf is going to be stitched or not, but he said, because it is stitched right now and it doesn't really allow them to do anything else. So will it be painted? He kind of hinted that it might be.
They've had 2 changes to it in the last few years, right? Moving the hash marks too.
Yeah, so maybe just a blank canvas, and then for every time another football team or a soccer team or whatever team wants to play on there, they'll have to go and paint the lines on, and then they'll come back and do it for the CFL. So invest in football paint if you're an investor, and maybe that'll blow up in the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we didn't talk much about the football game itself in Week 17, but any early thoughts on the Riders heading to Edmonton to take on the Elks, who just
the Elks
lost
have been
to the
bitten
Ticats
twice. Hey,
yeah.
They've been stung twice with last play field goals. They've played way better. They've got some fire. You see Mark Killam, their head coach, and Cody Fajardo, the quarterback. They're ticked at the way they lost, because they played well enough to win those 2 games, and they're desperate. They need to win a football game. I think they have way more confidence than they did early in the season, and I think that they're going to be a worthy opponent for the Rough Riders. They Justin Rankin, just an amazing running back, one of the best in the Canadian Football League. And if they turn him loose, gosh, the Montreal Alouettes had a rookie running back run for 127 yards against the Rough Riders. So maybe the Rough Riders aren't as capable of stopping the run anymore. And I think that this could be a great game. Edmonton might be desperate enough to pull out a victory, and after Saskatchewan's last performance, you have to wonder what happens to them once in a while. They've had 3 of those this year, 2 against Calgary, 1 against Montreal. Do they get out of their funk again? Probably. They're usually capable of that. They are the league's best team. But I think Edmonton, you talk about a trap game. I don't know if it's really a trap game. It might just be one that Edmonton's certainly capable of winning.
Yeah, the Elks, I would say, I don't know, mathematically would probably need to run the table. The Riders have a 4-point cushion on Calgary, who lost last week. So Saskatchewan doesn't need to win. They're going to be one step closer to clinching a home playoff spot, and potentially top spot in the West if they were to get a win. But nobody's really, it's not this game where we have to win. It's not a must win game. So that always sets up different scenarios, right? Where you go into a game, you don't have to win. The other team is desperate to win. Who's going to, rise to the occasion the most, right? So that'll be an interesting one to watch. Obviously, Saskatchewan, in my opinion, is they're more rested, probably more talented, probably have the better team, but who wants it more? And that's sometimes what it comes down to.
It does. And the Rough Riders against Montreal didn't look like they wanted it.
Exactly. That's
really rare, right?
Yeah. And Montreal, for how good they looked in Saskatchewan, didn't look like anything the next week. So this league can change on any given week.
And the invincible Calgary Stampeders get blown out by BC, losing 2 quarterbacks. Hey, and Vernon Adams, one of his passes hit the crossbar, didn't it?
Yeah, so that's why they changed it. Yeah.
That's why they changed it. As soon as Vernon Adams messes up,
to do it right away.
Time to go.
All right. Well, that will do it for episode 179 of the Rider Rumblings podcast. Darrell, thanks as always for joining.